So I just read Mercer's Inside Employees' Minds 2026 report, and it's full of interesting data. Y'all know I love a good report with lots of numbers and charts. One of the things that hit me was that 73% of respondents said that they are not seriously consider leaving their organization right now, a big change from the Great Resignation days. But only 67% said that they felt energized at work. Given this period of uncertainty we're in, I understand why people would just stick with what they've got right now, but wouldn't it be nice if the reason was because they loved what they were doing? My guest today is Dr. David Shar. He is a consultant who works with organizations and leaders to create workplaces that are passionate, healthy, and kind. In addition to teaching graduate courses at the University of Maryland, David's research explores why people fall out of love with their work and how to rekindle that spark before it's too late. David, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here. What a cool setup. Love it.
Thank you. I know I always feel like I'm, like living this fun city vibe when I come and I have this whole setup here. So it's definitely, it's a fun place. It helps give me a little spark. And I know spark is something that you are familiar with, thinking about the context of work and people have passion for their work. How did you get into the subject of your research?
Okay, first of all, masterful interviewer with the segue from the get-go. Awesome. So, okay, so the way that I got into my research, very non-traditional. I actually started as a serial entrepreneur and found myself with an ice cream shop in Baltimore City, which right now we're sitting in the middle of the winter in Baltimore with snow outside, and I'm thankful that I am no longer an ice cream shop owner. But my ice cream shop was in the thick of Baltimore City. Most of my crew members came from the inner city, from some really rough neighborhoods where they had parents that were incarcerated or dead. They had siblings that were being shot at on the street, in prison. There's just really horrible, traumatic stories. And I was like from the suburbs, bright-eyed, had no idea about any of this. And I was really excited to work in ice cream. And I also loved the goofiness. It was a Cold Stone Creamery franchise. So I was able to like throw a banana costume on, mortify my family and my crew members when I did, but like goofy songs and dances, loved all of that. But there was something else happening accidentally. I sort of stumbled into this, and that was that my crew members stuck around. They didn't want to leave. People would come back a year, 2 years after coming for the first time and look and wonder that they were served by the same, teenager or young adult.
Yeah.
And because, annual turnover rates in food service are typically well over 100%.
Yes.
But they kept coming back. And in fact, they would come in on their days off and I'd have to shoo them away because they try to help customers and things like that. But it was a very specific moment when one of my crew members, her name is Simone, she came in and she was such a light when she would come in. She was so great with the customers and she would sort of juggle ice cream and do all these tricks. And but one day she came in and I noticed that she was really off, and I pulled her into the back. I said, Simone, what's going on? And she told me that her boyfriend, who was either a member of the Bloods or the Crips, this high school kid, was in this gang. He had been found by the police that morning. He had been shot multiple times and left for dead. He was flown to shock trauma. They didn't know if he was going to make it. And so I told her immediately, go, get out of here. Like, why did you show up to work right after finding out that news? And she stopped me and she said, no, I need to be here. And I said, I would pay her for the day because I know what that can be like. And, and she refused. And she said, no, I need to be here. I can only be here. This is my happy place. Those are her exact words. I still remember decades later. Because those words, it felt like this weight on my shoulders that if I, as a ice cream shop manager, could impact somebody in that way accidentally, how are we impacting our employees in every industry? How come my ice cream scoopers were finding meaning in such a trivial job, but my friends who were doctors, lawyers, teachers, HR professionals dreaded going to work on Monday morning.
Mhm.
And so that literally changed the course of my life. And I went
Wow.
back to school as an early college dropout. I went back, continued college, got my master's, got my PhD, and continued to research why people fall out of love with their work, and what is it that's standing in their way of finding meaning, like Simone did in scooping ice cream.
Yeah, that's wild. I mean, my initial thought is just when I think about sometimes, all the circumstances and the chaos around you that for Simone, just maybe the structure and the rules and clear expectations and all of those things just helped, that and maybe the mental distraction. I don't know. That's just a lot going on in that situation. But
Yeah.
in your research, so what is the cause? Like, why do people lose that passion for the work that they're doing?
Yeah, so often I found that with my participants in my study, um, there was this commonality that people would join for something. It was the
Mhm.
meaning, that the mission. It was to prove themselves either to themselves or others. So some of these reasons are healthier than others, right?
Mhm.
Or it was for a lot of people, it was growth and development. And the common denominator though was that whatever brought them in, the external environment management that's there in order to empower and to bring out the best in their people ended up stepping in their way, and
Mhm.
people began to stagnate. If they were looking for development, they hit a wall and they began to stagnate. If they were looking for meaning, as one person who worked in social work type jobs said to me, they would always tell us the mission, the mission, the mission, and we would always sacrifice for the mission, the mission, the mission. And she said, and then one day she said she was having this conversation with a manager who was not her own manager, but another higher up in the organization. And the manager said, nobody actually cares. And she said that day was like she felt like she was Dorothy and she saw the wizard behind the curtain, and that wizard
Mhm.
didn't give an F,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and it was just this awakening, and it's like if they don't care, maybe this whole thing is a facade, or
Mhm.
maybe am I the dupe that keeps putting in so much effort
Yeah.
when all it's just business for everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's interesting. A couple different perspectives. One, just the sense that really that first level leader, that supervisor, that first line manager, I think you're exactly right in the sense that they are the company to your first level workers, right? It's not the higher vision, the mission and the values and the things that your HR team behind the scenes are trying to impact. It really is the interaction with that person that they have day to day, and that they can make such a big difference for everybody else in the organization.
Yeah, and you have no idea who's throwing things off, and but it's really interesting because we spend so much money on consultants to come in and help us with set our values, our core
Mhm.
values, and our mission, and our vision, and how to translate this to everyone. Um, but the truth is, I love doing this exercise. When I'm speaking with HR professionals, also when I'm teaching my students, I do this exercise where I ask them what the core values of their organization are, and they're able
Mhm.
to list it off real quick, right? And then I ask them to reflect and say, okay, let's say you just landed there. You don't know what they say their core values are. Take an honest look around the organization. What
Mhm.
are the core values? And sometimes people say, oh, core value, winning as a team, that's what they tell us. But in reality, when you look at what the core values are based on behaviors and actions throughout the organization,
Yeah.
maybe the actual core value is backstabbing. If the
Yeah.
person
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
backstabs gets the promotion, that's what the core value is. I don't care if you're telling me that it's integrity.
Yes.
It's not.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's so interesting because I look at that from I have a similar thought, but from a slightly different perspective, which is a lot of my work is in the total reward space and
Mm.
looking at comp and benefits and work life effectiveness and all of those things. And one of the things that drives me absolutely insane is when an organization is like, well, we're a family here. And I'm like, no, you're not. No, you're not. Like if your employee has like an issue with their child or their pet or something happens, like you're going to help a little bit, hopefully, but they're not your family. You're not going to do the same things. And I think that, even if you say, okay, well, our culture then kind of flip it and say, okay, well, we're family friendly. Okay, are you? What kind of premiums are you charging for family coverage? What kind of time are you allowing for people to attend school events? What are the things that you're doing that actually say we are family friendly? Because again, like usually they've gotten the message that you're not a family, but even to think like it's the same kind of thing of like, what are the actual behaviors and what do you actually do? Are they really supporting it?
Yeah, yeah. It's like there's a seminal article, brilliant research article called "The Folly of Rewarding A While Expecting B." Right?
Yeah,
Like if you want to see what the organization values, look at where they're investing their money, and
yeah,
and so I think that's an excellent perspective on that, a very accurate perspective on that.
yeah.
But there are certain things, especially with burnout. One of the key symptoms of burnout is an increased sense of cynicism. And
Mm.
so, and you see just the zeitgeist is changing. It used to be that you had to say we're a family here, otherwise nobody would want to work there. Now, when, my students will tell me that there's certain things that are automatic red flags.
Hmm.
We're a family here is one. And then another one is we work hard and we play hard. They don't
Hmm.
believe that one. They believe
Yep.
that just means we're going to overwork you. And the third one is we value diversity here,
Mm.
because that's a very performative thing to say. It's a
Yep.
great thing to do and a performative thing to say.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I think particularly and you would know more working with actual students, that people want organizations to, particularly in the areas of diversity and things like that, and some of like the social issues, they want an organization to actually have an opinion and take a stand. But just as you said, it can't be performative. There has to be true action behind it.
Right. They want to see the receipts, right?
Yeah.
And so there's a big difference. Again, like does your if you have somebody, a diversity, a DEI director, if
Hmm.
where those still exist, right? But if
Yeah.
you have that person and there's sort of a makeshift PR position, that's very different from being embedded in HR.
Yeah.
That's a real big difference.
Yeah, yeah. So one of the things that you've mentioned a couple times is the idea of burnout. Tell me a little bit more, what does burnout look like? And then I want to talk a little bit about not just what it looks like, but I think that often we look at that as it's an individual problem. It's a you problem, right? It's not the organization. That's a failing on your own. So talk a little bit about burnout.
Yeah, it's funny. In the beginning of my career, where I would take as many, like just any job that came to me, I found myself often being hired to come in and speak to employees about how to overcome their burnout, by walking more and doing more yoga and things like that. And ultimately, what I found was when the number one sort of weapon to fight burnout is employee facing, all you're doing is teaching employees how to take a punch and get back up.
Mm.
Resilience is important, but what if you could talk to leadership about how to stop punching them? You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
how to block some of those punches from hitting
Yes.
them. So I think that resilience is a piece of burnout of recovery, but not or prevention, but not the main issue. But everything in an organization is contagious, which is ridiculous. I mean,
Hmm.
burnout is contagious, and how could it be so contagious if it is an individual flaw that this person doesn't have enough resilience, etc. There's a lot of things that we misunderstand about burnout. One of them is that burnout is just overwork. You just can't handle all of the work. And for that, I always challenge people to reflect on being in a busy bar on a Friday night, right?
Hmm.
A busy bar. You've got that bartender back there. Maybe you've had experience being that bartender before, but there's this experience of the bartender. Everybody's calling out orders, and they in that moment do not look burned out at all. They look like they're
Mhm.
in a sense of flow because they literally are. Their
Yep.
brain is just not even, it's on autopilot as they're taking cards and cashing people out and taking tips and flipping drinks if that's what they're doing and making this one and this one at the same time, and they're doing all this and it's a state of flow. So if burnout is overwork or overload,
Mhm.
that doesn't make sense. But if you take that exact same bartender and now you're in the same scenario, but every time the bartender turns around to reach for a glass, the glass is either not there or it's
Mhm.
dirty. Now you see somebody who is starting to burn out. And that's what happens at work. It's not that, oh, you have too much on your plate. It's that I signed on to do something and hopefully it was meaningful because
Yeah.
99% of jobs out there have some sort of positive impact for their customer, their client, their patient, their whatever,
Yeah.
whoever it is, right? Um, and so you go and you join this career because you want to have an impact on these people, but then all of the bureaucracy and the interpersonal conflict, the red
Yeah.
tape, and people saying no because it's safer than saying yes, and the paperwork where the people who are high enough in the organization to see the big picture and how
Mhm.
that paperwork plays into it are not translating that for you. So you just
Mhm.
feel like you're buried in things that's meaningless work, like Sisyphus pushing the giant boulder up the hill just for it to roll down and push it up again. That's when people start to burn out.
Yeah. You just took what was probably a 9-month process for me to decide to start my own business. And put it into something much more concise. It's very much all those things you just said. Like I loved the type of work that I did, and I loved working with the clients. And then it was like, all right, we're going to have this meeting to talk about planning this next meeting, and and it
Yeah.
just was like, and then we need this paper to do this to do that, and it was like, oh my gosh, like I felt like I spent so much time on non-value add things, and it didn't bring me any joy at all.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
very much that was like, yeah, that was my brain over a period of time.
Right. And I also think of like those Teach for America teachers, who very rarely actually become teachers, I think, because of career for their long-term career,
Mhm.
because I think that people look and they have an idea of a career. Either
Yeah.
they know a lawyer, or there was a specific teacher in their life, or they loved watching ER when they were growing up. I don't know how many of your listeners even know what ER is. Grey's Anatomy, is that right? So like,
Before
they,
Noah Wiley was the pit, he was
yeah.
ER.
Oh, right. Exactly. So like they have this image of what it is, and
Yeah.
that's why they join. And so you have these people that want to be teachers, and they want to, because of the movies they've seen. They think they're going to go into
Mhm.
an inner city school and they're not only going to teach math, they're also going to teach them ballroom dancing and break up all the gangs in the neighborhood,
Right,
because
right.
that's what the movies tell them. And then they get in there and they try to be creative and they're shut down. And
Yeah.
they're shut down by the principal who's saying, just cool it. I used to be that excited too one day, once upon
Yeah.
a time.
Yep.
But they're also shut down by, you've got to teach to the test. They've got to just pass their test. But you're also shut down by the individuals themselves, the students that you want to come in there and be their savior. And they're like, who are you? What are you doing?
Yeah. Yep.
But, and that happens in a variety of industries, but it's that you just keep getting shot down and dissuaded. One of the ways that people overcome burnout, or a outcome of burnout often, is that people will seek promotion. So a
Mhm.
lot of teachers, when they're fully burned out, seek to be promoted to administration. So what ends up happening is you've got all these administrators who once were bright-eyed, big idea, like wanted to make a difference, but they reached a point where they're like, that it's pointless, it's useless, and that's when they become administrators. Now they're the leaders. That's not healthy.
Yeah. And I especially think with education, like those teachers have so many transferable skills that it's unfortunate that maybe they see administration as the only other option when really like, oh my gosh, there's so many things that those folks could do that, maybe they would get some of that spark back.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the other things that you've talked about and have mentioned is just having kinder workplaces. And I think that we are at a stage in our society right now in a place where kindness is something that is seriously lacking. And I would love to hear, how can we create kinder, more humane workplaces?
Yeah, so I know that you've seen this too with managers. It's I think that there's this, you have to be tough at times, and so because of this fundamental misunderstanding of the difference between being kind and being nice,
Yes.
managers either they're always nice, and then they call HR and they say, "Oh, this person doesn't deserve a raise," or "We've got to
Mhm.
fire this person," and you say, "Okay, where's the paper trail? How many
Yeah.
times have you spoken to them?" Oh, they know they're not supposed to be late. What do you mean spoke to them? They know.
Right.
They know, right? It's because of this fear that I have to be nice, and being nice is about being liked, right?
Hmm.
It's a very selfish kind of thing, right? Being kind is something different. Being kind is being invested in somebody's development. I've told way too many people, and now I'll tell even more. My my wife loves this, but I tell them that my wife is one of the least nice people that I know. And I love her to death because she is also the kindest.
Hmm.
Everything that she says, you know that you will get the real truth from her and that it comes from a place of love. If she
Hmm.
sees that you are hurting yourself or on the wrong path or doing something wrong, she will step in and help you immediately. And sometimes that help is some really tough love.
Yeah.
And that's what we need to see more of. It's not this performative, nice, where you smile to someone's face and then you call HR behind the. It's really
Yeah. Yeah.
this not fearing feedback,
Yeah.
like being able to give feedback in a serious way. But in order to do that, you need to be a bucket filler. You know the bucket filler thing, right?
Oh, tell me
Um,
the bucket filler.
so the bucket filler. So I've seen this in two places. I've seen it in a couple workplace break rooms, and I've seen it in preschools. So the bucket filler concept is that, and there's a song that I will warn everyone not to listen to it because it is in the earworm. You won't be able to unhear it. I make my talent development class listen to it, but
I'm hoping you're about to sing it for us.
no, I couldn't even do it. But a bucket filler, the concept is that in order to pull out of somebody's bucket, you have to fill it up first, right? So I remember working in an organization where I was a manager, and the manager above me came up to me and said, "Hey, so and so, he doesn't have a name tag. Could you go tell him to put a name tag on?" I had just walked in the door.
Hmm.
And so I said, "No, sorry, can't do it right now." And they said, "What do you mean you can't do it right now?" I said, "I haven't even said good morning to the man. I'm not going to walk up and say, 'Hey, name tag.' You've got to fill somebody's bucket before you earn the right to take something out. People need to see that you're invested in them. If every conversation you have with them is corrective in nature,
Hmm.
then they don't get that you're invested in them, even if that really is where you're coming from. But you need to
Yeah.
be their biggest cheerleader. If they know that you're there to tell them what they're doing right and the impact that that's having, and to thank them and to guide them, then when you tell them that they did something wrong and the impact that that's having and to guide them,
Yeah.
then it's just the same thing. It's you as a mentor helping them.
Yeah.
But if you're just there for the corrective stuff, and especially if you keep pushing off, that other stuff, and then you give them this corrective feedback, that's not going to get you any buy-in. But in addition to that, we talked about everything in work being contagious. I don't want to leave this out. Incivility is incredibly contagious.
Yes.
And the leading predictor that somebody is going to be uncivil to somebody else at work. Do you know what that might be?
I would say seeing it from a leader.
Yes, seeing it from anyone. So
Mhm.
if you were the victim of incivility, or even if you were an innocent bystander and saw incivility in action from a
Yeah.
leader, from a colleague, from a customer, from a client, you saw incivility happen, you are now more likely to be uncivil towards somebody else. completely different from anybody that was involved in the first incident.
That's it. It's interesting to hear that and to hear your perspective from it
Yeah.
because I will tell employers, we have conversations on, performance management and that being not the annual review, but exactly what you're
Yeah.
talking about, that ongoing feedback cycle. And I will say what you tolerate, you promote. And so when your people see that, then they're like, okay, well, this is okay. And so why wouldn't I just act the same way?
Right? Why not? Look, you're going to increase vigilantes in your in your office if you don't take control. And sometimes it's just this fear of conflict, and that's another whole nother discussion, right? That we fear conflict, and conflict is actually good inside an organization as long as it's not personal conflict. But we fear conflict, so we don't want to talk to somebody about their issue if they're a workplace bully or any sort of counterproductive work behaviors. But so we don't approach that because we either fear the conflict or because we fear upsetting the person who's our highest performer.
Right.
You
Yep.
know, and so
Oh
we
yeah.
don't want to lose
I've
that.
heard that so many times.
Right. But then you end up losing everybody else. And
Yes.
there's an impact that it has on
Yes,
everybody else.
absolutely. Yes. Yeah, you're exactly right. Okay, I have two last questions for
Sure.
you. So the first one is what is something that everybody can do in the next 24 hours to make their workplace a little bit kinder?
Okay, so there's this metaphor that I've heard before. I wish I could cite the source, but I've heard it from a couple different places. It is to be the thermostat, not the thermometer. The thermometer is in the room and it takes the temperature of the room and
Mhm.
says, "Huh, it's a little toxic in here," and then maybe it joins in, or maybe it just backs out slowly. The thermostat, that's the one that sets the temperature, right?
Mhm.
You walk into a room and you set the temperature. I think the most important thing is that we have this fundamental misunderstanding of what leadership is. And leadership, legitimate power, is the power that you get due to your job title. But I think
Mhm.
that if everybody took a second to reflect, they could think of somebody who's in their current workplace or in their past that had a job title and had no power. And
Yeah.
they could also think from their past or their current workplace of somebody who has all the power and no job title to
Yeah.
back it up, right?
Yep.
So understanding fundamentally that you have the power to implement change, it starts with you. So
Yeah.
just do something nice.
Yeah.
Don't
I like
react to
that.
somebody else. Just do something nice. Don't be the one where, like you take a puppet and you pull a string and their arm goes up and you pull. That's what we are all day. And we call those dummies, right? For a reason. Don't be a dummy, right?
Yes.
Don't be a dummy.
Yes.
Like, go out there.
I'm gonna use the thermostat. So I used to have a sign in my office thinking when you said contagious, that
Yes.
hit me because I used to have a sign that said a positive attitude is contagious, but don't wait to catch it, be a carrier.
Oh,
And
love
so
it.
I
Love it.
I love that, but I'm gonna set that aside and I'm gonna go with the thermostat now.
Love it. I love both those. Perfect.
Okay, and my last question. I saw some information about you. Talk to me about pizza.
Okay. I love pizza.
I
Um,
love pizza.
First of all, anywhere I travel, I've got to find like the highest rated pizza place and check it out. My controversial take on pizza is pineapple and ketchup.
Two thumbs down.
Right, because you don't think about adding the sweet to the pizza. I think if the sauce isn't sweet enough, it's no good. I think that pizza should have like some sweetness to it. I know it's probably my most controversial take, but that's my takeaway.
Yeah, on that note, I loved everything you said about leadership and about being kind, but when it comes to pizza, we got to end things here.
Understood.
David,
Understood.
thank you so much for spending time with me today, and thank you for all this insight and these good tips on things that we can start doing to, get that spark back and keep some positivity in our workplaces. Thank
Thank
you.
you. It was such a pleasure.
Okay, I didn't even know that ketchup on pizza was a thing, but I looked this up on Insta and there are lots of posts on the subject. Someone commented, "At least it's not pineapple." And the "Oh my God, Becky, look at that" comment side of me agrees. Y'all keep your ketchup and your pineapple off my pizza. Thank you for tuning into the Gorilla HR podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe. See you again soon.
That's it for this episode of the Gorilla HR podcast. We hope you found some unconventional wisdom and actionable advice to help you in your own HR journey. Remember, we're all working together to build better workplaces. Want to join in the conversation? Send us your questions, stories, and maybe even your own guerrilla tactics to podcast@gorilla-hr.com. And if you enjoyed the show, please like, subscribe, and share with your network. Until next time.